talking about free rider imaginary doctor, I think it was. Yeah. You mentioned that people complained that both immigrants and doctors were free riders. Do you find that the free riders tend to always show up on the extremes, or is there ever anything in the middle, depending on like who's complaining?
Yeah. Okay.
So we should be clear, not doctors of history.
No, we're good point. I've actually seen F.R. Scott's tax returns. Just, every once in a while some important person leaves their tax returns in their archival phone. It's fun. J.S. Matthews, the archivist in BC, was another unexpectedly, privacy revealing moment. So I don't think it's about extremes of income that puts someone in the hard to tax category. I mean, in the past, in our present one, it's a different circumstance. But yeah, sure, in the sense that people who have no fixed address are kind of hard to track down, maybe that does make them harder to find for assessment. But since the mid-60s, we've had social insurance numbers, and that's made us easy. It's gotten rid of the issue that made tax avoidance possible for lower income people. To have a couple of jobs even under different names was an easy thing to do in the 1950s. But it became a lot harder to do after the mid-60s. Physicians having a reputation for being tax avoiders, in a sense, pre-Medicare, they're all just small business people, and at various times their income is very, very thin and precarious, depending on where they are, and other times it's, rich and luxurious, and they have well-paying clients who pay their bills regularly. So they do have a bit of an income smoothing problem, as we would call it now. And they certainly they had a reputation for entering tax returns. So I'm going to repeat a story from the book. It's just such a good story. In the 1930s, when Ontario was coming up with a plan to kind of pay doctors for taking relief patients, they're trying to come up with a rate to pay the doctors. And they do, and the doctors reply, the organization, Ontario Medical Association, replies, "That's absurd, we make way more money than that." They said, "Well, we're just drawing it from your income tax returns." So, it was kind of a first offer if they came back. So, but all people with a similar problem, that is a small business, highly variable income, ability to conduct transactions in cash or kind, all such people that now are hard to tax. Yeah.
I was wondering, during your historical research, did you find any evidence of challenges to any of these, like maybe tax cases where people would try to challenge the enforcement of tax collection, or write, letters of kind of refusal to the Minister of Finance or to the Premier of Nova Scotia? Was there actually no public or civic action taken kind of to fight back on
that? So there's an American sociologist called Isaac Martin who's written a people called Rich People's Protest Movements, which he explains how in the United States, after the repeal of Prohibition, a lot of very well-to-do people expected to have, this is a long answer, but I promise I'll get to Nova Scotia soon. After repeal of Prohibition, a lot of rich people that agreed to income taxation while Prohibition was on said, well, now that you're getting all that alcohol money, how about getting rid of that federal income tax? You don't need it anymore. That didn't happen in Canada because we didn't have that same calendar of Prohibition. And those American folks really built a kind of a movement of outrage in which they persuaded a lot of not particularly wealthy people that there was something evil about the federal government in the United States getting more than 25% of your income as taxes. So that organization was well-financed, well-organized. It really kind of dominated tax protests in the United States. Whereas the Canadian story is quite different. There's all kinds of people who don't like their taxes. You know, most of us like a little bit more money than we have. And so grumbling, complaints, et cetera, all part of the situation, normal. What I find interesting in a historical way is when those complaints get attached to some other political logic, right? So, you know, when the civil servants and politicians of Quebec after Caron say, this is just another example of how abusive federalism is, right? And for Chinese Canadians in British Columbia, that sort of suspicion of them as shadowy Oriental tax dodgers in the 50s is understood in this era of human rights as offensive. And so you get an engineer named David Wong who finds Oriental stamped on his tax return and makes a big stink and writes to every politician in the country and gets uptake on that. And I'm sure the heads were at least shaken, if not rolling, in the BC tax office. But by and large, the organization around tax protest is a kind of small business story in Canada. You know, it's we're struggling and we need help, and that pulls in people from a whole bunch of different kinds of occupations. So in the late 60s, an attempt at tax reform stirred up that particular hornet's nest to the point that it created the Canadian Federation for Independent Business, which is still today a kind of reflex, knee-jerk, you know, it's tax, it's bad kind of organization. So we do have a mix of kinds of tax protests, and certainly there's also inchoate tax protests. There's people who, you know, who just conducted a fair share of their economic life in the gray or black economies, you know, dealing cash under the table. And the flourishing of the tax planning practices that have really were almost non-existent in the 1950s, but really pick up speed in the 60s in Canada, are also signs of people, they're not writing to their member of parliament necessarily, but by finding these ways of reducing their tax bill, they're saying, I don't consent to this level of taxation. There may be a more specific question that I can ask you to talk about afterwards in the discussion, but that's the sort of big picture on Canadian tax protest in 7 sentences. Isabel.
Well, just on your explanation there, I was gathering that for some small businesses, is some of the burden the administrative work and not simply the money. And then that brings me to another question, and that's the education of people filling out these tax forms. Could you just talk a little bit about that?
So Isabel was asking about the administrative burden for small businesses and the relationship between education and tax compliance. So the Commissioner of Income Taxation between 1931, when the first guy was fired for all kinds of scandalous reasons, guy who was Commissioner of Federal Income Tax between 31 and 46, said, income tax is a tax for intelligent people. If this country is not sufficiently literate to enable its citizens to comply with income tax, then, you know, essentially we've got to work on that, right? That so there, you know, it is, you know, just the keeping of regular business records was not the ordinary practice in 1919 that it was by 1960. Prairie farmers had a special instruction written out for them, and one, you know, tax case that a journalist used to illustrate the problem in the early 50s was that a local merchant, a general store merchant in Cape Breton, discovered they'd been making a profit every year since 1938. He didn't know, right? So, you know, that's a thing, and you know, it's part of why the federal government, now a little advertisement for the federal government, they've been putting a lot of money into support for small business tax compliance, because there's no question that for small businesses, and look, any academic in the room who's ever filled out a shirt form knows how unpleasant it is to, just keep on, adding in information that it's hard to collect, and man, it's just a burden. And lots of small business. When people tell me they're happy to pay taxes, I said, thank you, good for you, but you have a regular salary, and it's deducted at source, and you don't actually have to write that check that is competing with a check that you need to write to your suppliers, and it really is easier for the salary paid worker. And so some of the reason for what sometimes seems like irrational fury on the part of Canadian Federation of Independent Business really is that tax paying, I think, is harder for small business than it is. But the solution to that is an administration one. It's not just lowering rates.
Well, it's almost like a double tax, right? Because one is the money and the other is your time.
Yeah, that's right.
Your time.
Economists study the time value of compliance in ways, again, above my pay grade, but I know that literature is out there. And it's not as burdensome for a larger firm where it's a smaller percentage of the firm's overall revenues and profit. But for smaller firms, the arithmetic's different. Hence the importance of numbers.
Okay, so we'll thank Shirley now. If you want to talk more or ask more questions, we have to go. Some of us will go. It's a tradition of this association. Turn left and turn left when you get out. The bar is taken by these hooligans there.
Okay, so we're going to another bar.
So we have to go out, left, and it's called the Albion Room. It's a
Oh
fun thing.
yeah, I remember the Albion.
But before we do so, please, on your way out, take a mini poster for the next talk, which is in a month from now. It's there's always one topic out of the 6 talks about the military. This time around, one person of the War Artist program, an indigenous soldier who went to Afghanistan, will be talking about indigeneity, war, and being in Afghanistan. His name is Adrian Stimson. You can take 1, 2, 3, put some on your door at work. And there's also another one with a list of the next 3 winter talks. One on digital history and the gay liberation movement, and another one on Bertrand Russell and his letters. So thank you again, and please join us at the pub after.
Okay.
There are also books to sell at the